everyone, Comic Reviewer here. This time we're reviewing on all new Ghost Rider issue number 2. Now, as you know, 3 years ago I did review the first issue of all new Ghost Rider. I had intentions to get issue 2 during the lockdowns and stuff, but couldn't find a cheap copy. But eventually I did off eBay. And the cover mainly has Robbie Reyes as Ghost Rider riding in his hot rod. And the story starts off with Robbie Reyes chasing the men who shot him down, with him saying, "It's bulletproof, you idiot!" "Huh, I got this." And of course, we see how they think they've basically blew him up, but of course gets back on one piece. And of course, we see eventually Robbie Reyes using his full speed as the Ghost Rider and knocking the armoured truck in half and the men falling to their deaths. And of course, we see him saying, "Hostiles terminated, with casualties over." Ugh. And of course, we see how in a secret hideout, we see how Mr. Hyde is congratulating his henchmen, but points out one's failure, and of course this is his way of celebration, saying, "You failed me, so I'm going to teach the main leader a lesson." And of course him saying, "Why, of course, I shall pour a drink. Leading an army of mercenaries on a retrieval mission is no simple task, so have a drink, walk into the office." But of course they hear something going on, and he ends up becoming Mr. Hyde. And of course him saying, "You, what's your name?" "Speak up!" "Mick Milligan, sir." "Take your men, get the missing duffel bag. You're in charge now. One more thing." "Yes, Mr. Hyde." "Watch yourself." And this is his way of saying, "Don't fail me, or else." Of course, we see how Robbie Reyes wakes up, and of course, sees something weird with his eyes. We see how at Cave School, they give him a temporary chair till Robbie can find a new one, which we know the bullies took from the kind of last issue. And we see how Robbie realises his face is now repaired now. And we see how at class everyone is kind of being rowdy and all that. We see how a substitute teacher shows up, who points out that he had the lessons planned on his iPad that got stolen, but saying that he don't know their names, but will eventually know them when he calls up the students for detention if they misbehave. We see how one of the bullies say, "Huh, son of a... it's password protected, cuz... Huh, what you looking at, fool? You want another beating?" And of course, we see how the original owner of the car, known as Grumpy, is giving some ruffians some sort of drugs, and of course, is given a large sum of money. And we see how they plan to use it on a young woman, and we kind of see him saying, "Fool, this is crazy of stupid. I said don't come back until you're fully paid up, you." But of course, we see how the woman ends up taking this sort of drugged-like drink. And we see how back at the garage, Robbie kind of sees the cars back to normal. And we see how his manager says to get back to work. Just as it seems like what they're going to do, the two kind of potential assaultists, she ends up becoming a Mr. Hyde herself. And of course, flings them across the room. And of course, this is where we see Grumpy realising that they have a kind of gold mill on their hands, and points out getting the rest of the pink pills, with one of his men pointing out they left the bag in the trunk of the car, and him being furious, knowing that a potential thing is going to get wasted. We see how Cabe and Robbie have dinner and that. Cabe's gone to bed, and Robbie kind of going back to the car, and we see him taking it for another ride. And we see how Grumpy's two henchmen try to kind of gun him down, but we see him ending up becoming Ghost Rider and taking down the henchmen. And with him saying, "Ah, Joker, let's go, let's go!" And of course we see how Robbie looks on. And of course goes after them, saying, "No, no, no! Ah, he's on us! He's on us!" And of course, we see how he manages to take down the kind of henchman. And as soon as Robbie gets out of the car, he sees his Ghost Warrior half in the reflection of the hood and saying, "What are you?" "Fool, the question is, what are we?" And this is the story. So I think issue 2 is not too bad. Like, yeah, it's going to have that kind of typical thing where the character kind of wonders what happened to them the previous night. You're going to have the character kind of trying to figure out what their powers are and all that. But I think it's still a solid, good story. So I think it still deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, Comic Reviewer here, signing out.